Hi, Dr. Rob Kiltz. How you doing? CMI Fertility Center. We're going a little live, and Will's helping us on the back end. And it's always great to be able to answer a lot of questions. We'll do some live ones, but we're really taking some notes that have been coming in over the last few days. A lot of talk about the CMI Fertility Prime 100, and we've been talking about the priming for egg quality and sperm quality, and typically we've been doing a 30-day prime. And more we're getting a better understanding that the environment of the ovaries and the egg development and maturity may take 60, 90, or over 100 days. So anytime you can spread it out and lengthen it is going to be better for you. And so the biggest thing with the 100-day prime is ketogenic diet, paleo diet. Keto is really the king, and look at Maria Emmerich's stuff on ketogenic adaptation, ketogenic diet, and she has a ton of recipes. I personally like to keep it simple. I'm pretty much steak and eggs. I call it the baby diet: bacon, eggs, butter, beef. But most of us can't do quite as stringent as I've been doing lately. But let me first take a question from Katie, who had a baby girl after following the Lupron protocol for frozen embryo transfer. And when it comes to have another, would I likely follow the same protocol, put on something new? And she's a little nervous about doing something new, and we are doing a lot of new and different things, but I always look to what worked. And if what you did in the past worked, we should stick to that in general, unless there was something really pressing to change it up. Hillary, I'd like Dr. K's opinion on a Femara protocol for frozen embryo transfer. At my local RE's office, some of the docs are using it and having great success with it. I'd like to know his thoughts. Well, the Femara protocol and natural cycles with or without a trigger shot, so following either natural ovulation or a trigger shot and then timing either a cleavage stage or a blast stage embryo transfer, I think is going to be the move to the future. Less meds, less shots, it'll be a lot easier. And Christy, 100 days of HGH, human growth hormone, seems like a lot. Yes, it can be. Any research to show that this can have long-term effects? What is the rationale for 30 days of antibiotics? Well, let me touch the antibiotics first. We know that the uterine and the pelvic environment is contaminated with bacteria in excessive amounts, and there's a lot of evidence of chronic endometritis and likely even endometriosis and salpingitis are all related to gut bacteria overcolonized plus a glucose dominant environment that causes even more inflammation. And a course of a week, 5 to 7 days, may not be enough, and it may take up to 30 days or even longer for some of these really resistant and hard to get bacteria to clear up. So we've been doing 30 days of either Doxy or a Z-Pak or Zithromax for longer. We tend not to use more broad spectrum antibiotics because there may be more resistance to develop. So you want to start off with either Doxy, erythromycin, or Zithromax. And then we believe, and from what we can see so far, that the 6 units or the low dose human growth hormone likely doesn't have any long-term side effects. And any of these medications have some risks that I don't think we understand completely. And if you can increase your environment, improve it with acupuncture and massage and changing your diet and LDN, Ovasitol, which lowers, or inositol, which lowers glucose and insulin levels, this can be really helpful to improve the environment. So there's a little bit out there on human growth hormone. There's not a lot. It's really a newer area. We're also beginning to look at PRP, platelet-rich plasma, possibly as an intrauterine infusion, 1, 2, or 3 treatments over 3 months may be something to improve the environment. Even intraovarian injections may be helpful. Let's see, if I don't have insulin problems, would taking Ovasitol benefit me? Well, I think for so many of us who are on pretty much a standard American diet, high carbohydrates, high protein, low fats, you're going to have some benefit to using the Ovasitol, men and women. And even if you're doing the ketogenic diet, the Ovasitol, inositol is likely going to benefit many of us. So I believe most of us have some form of a metabolic disorder. And I posted an article from Nutrition Journal from 2008. Actually, I sent it over to Will, and he's going to be posting it. There's a really lot of great information on the ketogenic diet and how a low-carb, high-fat diet really helps in so many ways. Avery, currently taking HGH and did estrogen priming. I'm now waiting for my period to start a cycle. Would it have been better not to do the estrogen priming? And at the end of the video, Dr. K says that continuing directly after stim cycle is better. And that actually serial stims for IUI, in the case that Avery did, seemed to improve the number of follicles, but the sizes were still all over the place. Well, it seems that doing back-to-back stimulations is going to help the environment, going to help the blood flow, and going to help the stimulation of the follicles and likely improve the number, the quality, and the quantity. So we think that's real important. We're beginning to recommend against the estrogen in the priming part of it, other than maybe the last week with a little bit of progesterone to bring on the menstrual period. Like the birth control pill, there may be more harm than good. So really trying to remove a lot of these suppressants, we're looking at that quite seriously. And so I wouldn't say that there was harm to taking the estrogen, but we are moving away from it. You do not have to have your period in order to start a stim if you're doing a freeze-all cycle. But if you're doing a fresh transfer, then I think that is real important to get your period. And Vicky, is priming for 100 days with human growth hormone better than priming during stims? Well, the human growth hormone during the stims isn't really a prime, but it's part of the stimulation and enhancement of the protocol for the enhancement of egg maturity and enhancing the eggs during that stimulation cycle. So we think it's important to do it both in a prime and then in your stimulation. We've been using 6 units approximately of human growth hormone. We think it's helpful. And the estrogen priming and Clomid flare, we're not doing the flare. We don't think that Lupron flare is helpful anymore, but we are doing some low-dose Clomid or low-dose, pretty much letrozole 2.5 milligrams for 5 days, along with the 150 to 225 of either going left, Follistim, or a combination with some Menopur, or in some cases, a Menopur only with a HCG Lupron trigger. And Shelley, great question. Can you continue a keto diet after a transfer? The keto diet or the keto food plan is most amazing and very important at all stages of the fertility journey and your pregnancy journey. We are fat burning machines, all carbs, all protein converted by the liver to sugar. And I know we want to consume more sugar once you're pregnant, but I'm telling you, it's not the thing to do. You really want to minimize the carbs, maximize the fat, cream, butter, eggs, bacon, beef, fatty, not lean meat, because remember, the lean meat converts to amino acids and to sugar in the liver, and thus it converts to fat. We want to store fat. And another important part about this article that I shared with Will, and you should be getting hopefully tonight, but if not tomorrow, is that weight loss is not important in any of this. It's simply converting and lowering your glucose so that your ketones, which are always there and always the energy for your mitochondria, are really going to show up and be stellar. So you can check your urine and do keto strips or your blood, but it's not really that critical. And Will, do you have any live questions coming up? And maybe I
Yeah.
could answer a few. We're going to keep it short and go from there.
Yeah. Sharonda wants to know, do you have to have a prescription for human growth hormone?
The human growth hormone does require a prescription, and we can help with that. Some insurance companies are covering it, and whether you're using Cornerstone or Freedom or Metro or King's or Apothecary, there's so many out there we're working with. We're here to work with you through either your primary care or other physicians in order to try to help get that covered for you.
Another one, Emily wants to know, I've had embryos frozen for 15 years. I didn't personally plan to use them, but wondering if they're just as good now, being so old.
Well, we believe those embryos in cryo storage are on hold, and they may be as good as when you use them fresh or soon after a freeze cycle. So we believe those embryos are still good. We're really encouraging more and more couples, women, individuals to donate their extra embryos, frozen, to other couples who are in such need of those. And we have a great package for frozen embryo transfers. Those people shipping embryos to us, it's still the most affordable IVF and fertility care in the nation. And that's been my dedication for the last 20 years at CMI Fertility. The quality we believe is exceptional. We are comparable to all the top leaders in the country, in the world. We turn no one away. And if you failed, we're always looking to change it up and be persistent. And remember, faith and fatty, fertile foods first. That's the key to this journey. Anything else, Will?
Yeah. Rebecca wants to know, she saw Ovasitol was mentioned as part of the 100-day prime, and she looked it up, and it said it was suggested for women with PCOS.
So
she has endometriosis, but she can't find anything on it assisting with endometriosis. So why would you recommend it?
So endometriosis, pelvic inflammatory problems, chronic inflammation, GI problems are really all due to the same problem, which is mostly hyperglycemia. Even if it's just slightly elevated, it's too high for what we are really meant to be living with. And then the chronic inflammation caused by excessive carbohydrates and plant antigens. Endometriosis, I believe, is another inflammatory condition caused by hyperglycemia or metabolic syndrome, syndrome X or metabolic MET-S. And so Ovasitol helps lower glucose and insulin levels. Glucose stimulates insulin. Insulin stimulates conversion of glucose and amino acids to fat. That's great if you have only a little bit of glucose in your body, but you don't. And so using the Ovasitol is going to help most of us. And again, I believe that fibroids, that endometriosis, and there's a lot of atypical endometriosis that we can't even see with our eyes. There's chronic diseases for all of us, whether you're male or female, young or old, and even cancer may be benefited taking metformin or Ovasitol or inositol, I believe. And if you read Thomas Seyfried's book, that cancer is a metabolic disorder, you'll understand much better about this whole process. But I believe it's all linked to generalized hyperglycemia due to eating like a pig or a cow 3 to 5 meals a day, filling the gastrointestinal tract with lots of molecules, and we're feeding the bacteria and the yeast that ferment. Fermentation is heat and gas, aldehydes and alcohol, and they're not good for any of us. And there was a recent article in the New York Times regarding fusiform bacteria in the colon being linked to colon cancer. And my bet is fiber, probiotics, a high carbohydrate plant-based diet is the culprit for most of us. Boost the fats, reduce the carbs, and or I call it intermittent feasting. 1 or 2 meals a day, 12 to 24 hours apart. get rid of snacking, protein bars, shakes, smoothies. They're not good for us. And I know it sounds crazy, and I didn't believe it, but we've had so many of our patients doing this after failed cycles, and it works. If not naturally, it'll aid and help in the assisted process. So I'm pretty much recommending inositol, ovasitol, the Theramegas, and either Conception XR for guys or Ovavite for women in order to help reduce the inflammation in the intra-abdominal space, which ultimately reduces inflammation in their entire body, and it'll help. What else, Will?
Sheeta wanted to know along a similar line, is ovasitol safe with metformin?
Ovasitol is better tolerated than metformin, and my suspicion as a supplement it's likely safe, but I'm generally recommending switching over to the ovasitol over the metformin. Problem is, ovasitol through Theralogics, and we have a discount code which you can get online, will help cut the price with that. So we believe that the ovasitol or inositol D is better than the metformin. But if you're taking the metformin and have diabetes, consult your physician before taking this on. But I'm only giving you some ideas that you might try, or I call it a do. And as you feel better in the ketogenic process, you will find that you don't need those drugs. And that article has shown how many of our patients, how many patients out there, and so many of our patients have eliminated use of their insulin, their hypertensive meds, their high cholesterol meds, and metformin. So give it a do. And we're gonna have one more question, and we'll get this great call that came through.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I had a question. What factors go into your decision when deciding to transfer one or two embryos?
All right, so one is best, is the recommended number for great blasts first cycle, and even second or third cycle under 35. If you have lesser quality, then it may be possible to do two. Our conversation is going to be always one first and possibly two. So that's an individual discussion you'll have with your practitioner before you do your transfer. So thank you very much, and my gratitude to everyone. Keep sharing and keep sending the questions and keep giving us some feedback. And I know the communication is always between relay faxes, and text messages, and correspondence, and calls. Appreciative to everyone, and keep sharing on this lifetime of a fertile journey. So thank you, Dr. Rob Kiltz, and thanks, Will.